Kia ora, Year 12. In this video, I'm going to go over why we like to factorize when we're solving quadratics. So we're going to start with some examples that will look really, really easy to you because they're exactly like the ones you first started out on back in year 10. So from there, we're going to move on to some harder ones. And then in the next video, I'm going to look at what we do when we get stuck and we can't factorize. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now is to pause this video and just try to solve each of these 7 equations and do those in your maths book. Then I'm going to work through those. So pause the video now and have a go at those 7 problems. Okay, so hopefully what you realized is that they start off with ones where I've done the factorizing for you. And we're going to start off with example 1, but please have a listen even if you've got these right, because we're going to talk about why factorizing works. So with this first one, it's given to you in factorized form. We're told that x plus 2 times x plus 4 equals 0. And what we have to do when we solve an equation is to find the x value that makes that statement true. So the reason that we're so hung up about making everything equal 0 when we're solving a quadratic is that if this factor is 0, then I'll have 0 times whatever number this is. 0 times anything is 0. So here there are 2 ways for this statement to be true, right? The first way for it to be true is for this factor to be 0. And if this is 0, we don't care about this one here. The second way for the statement to be true is for this factor to be 0, and then we don't care about this one over here. So that's how we get our 2 solutions. And I think sometimes we get so good at factorizing, we forget why it's a good thing to do. So in this case, what we can say is either x plus 2 is equal to 0, or x plus 4 is equal to 0. That gives me x is equal to negative 2, or x is equal to negative 4. And they are the 2 solutions that I've got for that quadratic. Now in year 12, where we're going to go next is that we're going to learn that you won't always have 2 real number solutions for every quadratic. But in this case, we have 2 distinct solutions. So either x is negative 2 or x is negative 4. And then question 2 is very similar. We've got x minus 2 times x minus 8 is equal to 0. So this will equal 0 when either x minus 2 is 0 or x minus 8 is 0. X equals 2 or x equals 8. And as I said, that's where we started off with solving quadratics back in year 10. So a small extension to that is if we've factorized an expression into 3 factors. So this is where we've got a common factor in our terms that's a constant, right? So we've got 2 times x minus 3 times x plus 4 equals 0. So we know that this factor, 2, can never equal 0. So we're back at the same place. We could write it down, though, as either 2 equals 0 or x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 4 is equal to 0. But this one is never true. So we're back to either x equals 3 or x equals negative 4. Now we're going to move on to ones where we don't have it in factorized form to start with. So question 4 was to solve this equation. Now, if we don't factorize, we'd have to basically do guess and check and look for values that might work. Okay, so we could try 1. What's x squared? 1 squared minus 9. Well, that's not equal to 0, so that didn't work, right? And that really isn't going to help me solve the equation. So factorizing means that I can see I've got a common factor in here of x. So x times what will give me x squared? X times x. X times 9 will give me 9x. So we have x times x minus 9 is equal to 0. So either x equals 0 or x minus 9 equals 0, x equals 0 or x equals 9. In the next one, I've deliberately given it to you not in the usual form that we want. So we get so used to working with quadratics where we start with this term that that's always a good thing to do when you see a quadratic that you have to solve, a quadratic equation. I'm going to rewrite it like this. 2x squared plus 3x plus 1 equals 0. So the first thing that we do is that we check the coefficients to see if there are any common factors. There aren't. So now we have a look and see if we can factorize it easily. Now some of you in this case will be able to spot how to do this one, and some of you will want to do it by grouping. So I'm going to show you how I would do this one just by looking. This number here, 2, is a prime, so that means that there's only one possible option for getting the 2x squared, right? It's got to be 2x times 1x. And then this number is also a prime, and we've got our nice sign pattern of plus plus. So it's got to be plus something and then plus something. So we can try that and see if it works. So let's expand that back out and check. We've got 2x squared plus 2x plus 1x. So that's good. That gives me the plus 3x and then the plus 1. So I've managed to factorize that without having to resort to the grouping technique. Here, 2x plus 1 equals 0, or x plus 1 equals 0. X is equal to negative 1/2, or x equals negative 1. Okay, 2 solutions to that one. The next one I've chosen is because it fits a very useful pattern, which is called the difference of 2 squares. We've mentioned that in class briefly this year already. This is a square number, this is a square number, and this is a difference, a takeaway. There's no x term in there. So if we have x plus 3 times x minus 3, not x minus x, this will expand to give me x squared minus 9. And there's a separate video on this that I made either last year or the year before. Okay, so just go search difference of 2 squares on this channel. So x plus 3 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0, x equals negative 3, or x equals 3. And the last one I'm going to look at here is to just make sure you remember how to use our grouping method. So suppose I've got 2 plus 15x plus 7x squared equals 0. First thing my brain needs to do is to reorder that. Let's rewrite it as 7x squared plus 15x, and there's an invisible plus sign there, plus 2 is equal to 0. Now I'm looking at this one, and you probably can do this one just by looking if you've done enough practice, but I'm going to do this with grouping to give us more practice at that. So we want two numbers that multiply together to give me 14, and two numbers that add together to give me 15. So I need to think about the factors of 14, and I'm looking for two that add to give me 15. So you can see here that the first ones that you look at will work, right? 1 and 14. I'm going to split this 15x up into those two bits. So now we have 7x squared plus x plus 14x plus 2 is equal to 0, or I could do it the other way around. And I'm going to put a little box around that pair and then around that pair. Let's factorize this first. Well, I have no common factor in the numbers, so it's going to be simply x here. So x here times 7x plus 1. And then over here, the common factor is 2. And it's 2 times 7x plus 1 is equal to 0. So let's take out our common factor first of 7x plus 1. 7x plus 1 times x plus 7x plus 1 times 2 gives me 0. Right, so in order for this whole thing to equal 0, either this factor has to be 0, 7x plus 1 equals 0, or this factor has to equal 0. That gives me 7x equals negative 1. So x is equal to negative 1/7, or x is equal to negative 2. So there you go. That video is the lead into where we're going next, which is a thing called the quadratic formula. But here, the point of this video was to remind you why factorizing is a really, really good method to solve an equation. We started with these ones, where they were already factorized for you, and we worked our way up to the hardest ones we've done so far, where we had to use grouping. Thanks for watching, and please, as usual, let me know if there are any mistakes or anything doesn't make sense.